feels like revelation is about to happen. And I say that because of all the senseless things that are happening today, because we have all forgotten to respect and love one another. We're too busy trying to be with the Joneses and not with our families. And I just would like to be a part of it, but on the positive side, not pointing fingers, at the point of finding solutions.
Council Woodson, if I could respond, because I think your words help me kind of focus on how can we raise the level of discourse about what's happening in the world today, because this is an institution, and so we're not talking about individuals, whether you like me, we're talking about the institutional problems, and I'll just go ahead and say it, the institutional racism. And so just like, you know, the head of the education department is very clear, inside of these schools, there's institutional racism. And I want to differ with Seth Brown in his description of what's happening in Muskogee County School District. Tonight will be the candidates forum, and I do invite you all to come, because it's going to be at the main library at 5:30, and it will be the candidates who are in the runoff election. That would be Kathy Williams, Sheila Williams, Pat Hughley Green, and Joanne Thomas. So this is an invitation to you, since if we thaw the freeze, some of that money is going to go to education. And I hear people out there with their movement to not thaw the freeze. And so these are some things that are going on in the community that are institutional, that have to be addressed for the quality of life in the community for all of us. And I'm not for glossing over things, Council Woodson. I'm for really dealing with it head on, because we are dealing with some serious problems. And you know, there's a saying that freedom fighters are guided by great feelings of love. It's the kind of love that you don't want to see any human being oppressed. And that's the freedom fighter in me. I don't want to see anybody hurt. I don't want to see our children being pushed out of the schools into the school to prison pipeline. I don't want to see that. But that's happening in Muskogee County. As a matter of fact, I sent the disaggregated data by school, by grade, by gender, by ethnicity. For all the middle schools, I sent it to all of the candidates tonight. I sent it to the whole media, because I asked for that information, and it took them a while to get it together at the school district. They said they'd never done it that way before. It's the only way to do it if you really want to see where the problems are. So when you look at Baker Middle School and you see that 50% of the students are being suspended every year, and you know that it's an all-black school, and you know that it's all poor people in that school, these are the institutional problems that have to be looked at. Because I'm not out here just talking at the grassroots level. I'm going with information. It's data driven. And I do want to say that to all of you, because it's too important for us not to raise the level of discourse about what is actually happening. And I'm glad you remember that I haven't been here that long, because I've been here going on 6 years now. And when I came here, I thought I was in some kind of time war. I couldn't believe it. And I was saying to Tanza and lots of other folks, that, why aren't you standing up? Do you see what's happening? And so I feel that right at this moment, after over 5 years, there is some standing up that's starting to happen. And I am happy as I can be. You know, so this is what's really important to me, that people are standing up for their rights, not just their free speech rights, say anything you want to say, but standing up for your rights and responsibilities to do something for the least of these. At church on Sunday, it was 1 Corinthians chapter 13, and it was all about love. And the pastor said, love is an action word. You got to do something with that love. And so I say freedom fighters guided by great feelings of love, and this is my love, and this is how I show it in the community, by looking out for the least of these. And so I just want that part to be clear about how I come at this. It is with great feelings of love, because we got a lot of hurting people in this town. And then we got a lot of people who are doing very, very well. And Mayor, you have talked about that disparity and inequity quite a bit. And I just want to tell you, I really cherish that card that you sent me when I first started the Building a Village program. We're still trying to get back at it. We had a few bumps in the road, as you know, but we're trying to get back to that building a village, because it really does take a village. And so that's the conversation I have with the school district. And that's the conversation I would like to have with Seth Brown and some other folks about how we do that work, because parents are key. And when I looked at the grants that were made, I work with parents. She's a parent. There are lots of parents out here, and we have to work with parents. We really do. And so you'll see some of that tonight at the forum.
Great.
And I'm just so glad that you're willing to give us all this time today. And I know you've been here a long time, but I really appreciated being able to hear everything that I heard today. And I know that you're all very serious, and I know how much you care, but we're going to move from the legal to the humane. That's one thing that I would say to you right now. Move from the legal to the humane. Just because it's legal, it doesn't make it right. But we want to operate on the basis of humane. Do you hear me, Councilor Woodson?
Oh, I heard you. I don't know if you
on the
meant-
basis of humane.
I think, and I don't want to get into like a debate. I think that you understood some of what I said, but I think you misunderstood some of it. We're on the same sheet. I'm just saying, we're on the same path and the same thought. We just express it differently.
Oh,
And
well, let's have a
sometimes
talk and
in
get
some-
together, you and I.
yeah. And sometimes
'cause I do wanna
in
understand that.
communications, you know, gets misinterpreted. At no time am I glossing anything you're saying. I'm agreeing with what you're saying. I've experienced, if I walked down the street and the person I walked with had to walk out of my sight before someone killed the two of us. Okay, I have been in Columbus, Georgia when I first started running for council, and I got stopped and asked for a green card, and I'm from Puerto Rico. So I know what you're talking about, but my parents instilled in me sometimes ignorance needs love. And I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, but that's what
That's
I'm
how you
saying,
feel.
that part of this gathering, this movement has to show love, has to go back to where came from, how we were brought up. But it's nothing on the opposite. We're all on the same sheet. I
Okay.
think we just communicate and look at it in different aspects of it.
Also, I want to thank Councilor Huff and Councilor Woodson, because I come from a different place. I appreciate you saying the time that you lived in. I appreciate you saying what you did. I'm a mother of a 21-year-old man with a job, no children, graduated high school, no criminal record. I'm also a mother of one of the programs y'all gave money to today. My son is a Columbus Scholar, 16 years old, tall, beautiful. I love my sons. And as I am a civil rights leader, I'm not only listening to my sons, but I'm listening to other young men and women in our community who are hurting. And they are saying, well, we don't have that communication with those who represent us because they can't vote. So for the people that can't vote, I have to listen to them. And it was something in me as a mother when they called me Friday night and they was like, you got to come march with us. My mind wasn't thinking, I'm going to go out here and this is what was going to occur. But as I'm looking and I'm hearing and I'm chanting, I'm like, I can't believe the youth of Columbus wanted to do something. Because as she said, people have been quiet so long, but I got up and it was my heart that said, go forth and do well. And though I did not do it correctly, sometimes you make those sacrifices. And I do want to apologize for that, because by no means did I want to display that I was against any rules. It was just, the moment. And once you're in the moment, it takes over you. However, those communications have started with our youth and young adults all over Columbus, different fractions. And so what we decided to do at our church, which is Metropolitan Baptist Church under Reverend Curtis Crocker, we started Conversation Sunday so that we can get all the hostility and all the negativity out. But as we're getting that negativity out with those youth, we're creating a vision chart so that when we come back to the city, it won't be us adults, it's going to be those youth talking, because we're listening to them and we're writing down what they're saying and what they want to see changed. Councilor Davis, when I first moved out of South Columbus a long time ago, I was having an issue in my community, and they didn't want my son to have a basketball court in the cul-de-sac. And I really don't think it was about the basketball court. I think it was about me, or us, I should say. And he came out and he talked to us and he got us galvanized. And I was able to stay in that neighborhood for 8 years with no problem. And so as people start seeing our youth mixing and mingling with our elected officials and having the sense that our elected officials care about their issues, I think that's what we need to get to, because it's not me, I'm just the vessel that they're using. Our youth are hurting and they want to talk. That's why we had the gun buyback program, because those guns are in the hands of our youth, and I definitely do not want to see another kid, 16, 17, or 18, murdered on the streets of Columbus.
But I also think, Mayor, that the council needs to be prepared for jail, no bail, and people being arrested in civil disobedience. And I think it was wonderful that Tanza and Brother Avery were willing to do that, because it makes a point. It's happening all over the country right now. And I come from the 60s with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and we used to say, jail, no bail. How many of us can we get arrested to fill up the jail?
Well, let's do this, and we appreciate you.
I know that's another subject.
Yeah, it is, but I do want to say that in our community today, you can protest lawfully. I can't speak to the 1960s. I do know that there is a rich history of permits being denied when they were otherwise due to be granted, and people being arrested because of that. That's not the way we run Columbus, Georgia, and so there is an opportunity to do things lawfully. And no, I don't want the jails filled up with people who could be productively serving and moving this conversation forward. If they have a passion to take to the streets, they also have a passion to come with solutions and help us get to where we need to be. And so putting our young people in jail for civil disobedience when they could have what you're calling civil disobedience, which would be breaking local and state laws, is really should not be the objective. The objective should be to lawfully and peacefully exercise your First Amendment rights with all the passion you can muster, and not fill our jails with our young people or our old people, for that matter, when there's all sorts of other options available to us to have a much more productive conversation. So I appreciate the rich history of the past. Again, I would note that in those circumstances, the civil disobedience was largely a result of the fact that the governments in place would not provide access to the public forum.
And that was not it.
But nevertheless, it is not my objective to put people in jail, and I hope it would be your objective as well. Let's have people behave lawfully, let's maintain civic order, and let's find real solutions to the problems that plague our community. So I appreciate you coming today. I look forward to your forum, and certainly I will be there and the chief will be there. So thank you. Okay? Yes, do. Let's schedule it. Thank you. All right, that concludes our public agenda. We are running a good deal behind, and so what we're going to do is take a break for an executive session, because we asked folks to be here today that the taxpayers are paying for, and I'm sure they didn't mean to be paying for them to watch city council meetings. So with that, I would entertain a motion for an executive session on litigation matters. There's a motion from Councilor Allen, a second from Mayor Pro Tem. All those in favor, please state aye. All right, I apologize for those of you all that have been waiting. We will try to make it very quick. If you would clear the chambers.
Thank you and welcome back. We just come out of the executive session. No votes were taken. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Items 1 and 2 on. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Item 3 on my agenda is the Housing Authority of Columbus for redevelopment of Booker T. Washington Public Housing. It's a revised memorandum of agreement. And I'll just tell you on May 31st of 2013, Resolution 17613 was passed by this council authorizing city manager to enter into an agreement with the Housing Authority to provide financial assistance to construct the Booker T. Washington apartments, and that's the redevelopment of those apartments. The city agreed at that time to contribute $2.5 million to the development, and the city was to pay the Housing Authority $400,000 per year for 5 years, with a payment of $500,000 in the 6th year, beginning fiscal year 2015. And then on May 26, 2015, another resolution was passed by this council that authorized a $2.5 million in community development block grant money for the Booker T. Washington development to offset the economic development reserve and the general fund balance, because that's where it was going to come from initially, and then we moved to CDBG. We've now determined that $1.5 million of site work construction that can come out of the CDBG dollars, and so we're requesting at this time that we revise once again how and where the money will come from, and we would use CDBG funds and change the payment schedule to $500,000 per year for 5 years, with the first payment due in fiscal year 2016. And so up to $1.5 million of funding for the BTW development project would come from CDBG and HUD, and the CDBG funds being allocated towards the development are from prior year allocations. We want you to know that, and we've talked about Laura McCoo Johnson going in and looking at monies that were left, tiny bits of money that was left over the years in various funds that was still available to us, and that's how she was able to piece together this money and gain approval through CDBG HUD to come up with that $1.5 million and use that CDBG fund, those CDBG funds, because those dollars are scheduled to expire, I believe, September of this year. And so we don't use those bits of funds from the various years of allocation that's scheduled to expire September 2016. We're going to lose it. And this is a way to use those dollars and not use the money initially scheduled to be used.
Councilor Huff.
Question on the schedule that you have. The monies have to be used, you say, by September?
September 2016, or
okay,
we lose those dollars.
Okay. And was the additional funding was added at the end or something? Did I see? Was it an additional $500,000 or something to complete the deal for something? I read through it, but I can't remember what I read.
With this particular project, when I first came in, we had verbally agreed to do $2.5 million in CDBG. One of the things that I came across was the environmental review process that was originally supposed to have been done on the front end wasn't completed. In order for us to commit CDBG funds to the project, we have to actually have a written agreement, have council approval, and also complete an environmental review prior to being able to commit or spend 1 penny of CDBG funds. In the original MOA, $1 million of the funding was supposed to go to the Chase Homes redevelopment, which is Patriot Point, that's already been constructed. $1.5 million was to go to BTW. We also did not have HUD approval prior to the demolition of BTW. So we had to go back to the beginning, do the environmental review, and now we found out that the $1.5 million is still eligible because we have enough site work at BTW to take up that whole $1.5 million with the CDBG funds. But the $1 million that was originally allocated to Patriot Point, we cannot use CDBG funds for that portion now because the work was done prior to us getting HUD approval. Because when we do an environmental review, we have to actually send it to HUD and ask for them to request to release their funding, and that was not done on the front end. So now the $1.5 million is eligible, but the $1 million is not eligible. So we have to go back to the original plan for that $1 million.
Okay, so demolition before HUD approval puts in a situation to have to get requests from them, request of them to
That'll come out of
spend the money on the back end.
Right.
allocations.
But the thing with this agreement is in the original MOA, you know, the commercial property that's out there, once that property is disposed of, the city will get a portion of those proceeds that'll come back to the city. So depending upon what the Housing Authority is able to sell the commercial portion for, we based it off of total development cost. The total development cost for BTW is approximately $20 million. We will be investing approximately $2.5 million overall. So if they sell the property for $10 million, we would get $1 million back. You know, so it just depends on what the property actually sells for to how much the city will actually get back.
Okay, is there a percentage or just a set amount that we get back?
It's prorated. So,
Prorated.
yeah, so we will be contributing about 12.5% to the development, and then the Housing Authority is contributing the remaining part of the $20 million development. So it's kind of prorated, so the proceeds off of the sale of that property will be split in that same, with those same percentages.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we've got Councilor Davis.
Mr. City Manager, does that mean within a year or 2 years, we'll pick up a year, a little over a day and a half, we'll pick up in the reserve?
We'll pick
Fund
up.
balance?
Say that again now?
If you're utilizing community block development grant money, does that mean now that you would pick up a little over a day in the reserve from the money
That we're not using.
that you're not using?
We will.
In the fund balance.
And the Deputy City Manager said it means we just won't reduce the reserve because now we won't pull that money out of reserve, which we were scheduled to do,
Right.
which would have caused the reserve to go down. And so by not pulling that money out of the reserve, it will not reduce it.
That'd be for 2 years.
Yeah.
All right, let's see here, Councilor Henderson.
Very quickly, I didn't hear you mention it, Laura, but the, whatever we receive in the form of a reimbursement from the sale, is that earmarked for CDBG or does that go to the general fund?
It'd be general fund.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. It looks like that's it for discussion. We've got a motion for approval. Is there a second? Second? All right. Discussion being concluded. Let me cue it for vote. Hold on a second. It says it's configuring. Does anybody know what that means? Okay. There we go. You can vote electronically. And it passes.
Okay, next, and we've got a representative here from NeighborWorks, but the city owns property that I know you're all familiar with at 5001 12th Avenue, and that property has been leased to Bellwood Area Neighborhood Development, known as BAND, for some time as a neighborhood community center, and they've been able to lease it from us for $12 a year. That lease agreement is scheduled or did expire June of 30th of this year, 2016, and BAN has requested to renew the lease for an additional 5 years. And so
We've got a motion for approval. Is there a second? All right, we have discussion with Councilor Garrett.
That's in my district, and just so everybody knows, that's a center that's used for their youth, it's used for their community organization, the neighborhood association, and that's all part of what we were talking about earlier with the redevelopment. But it's a great center, and they use it for a lot. It'll just be vacant property if we don't approve the lease.
All right. That concludes discussion. Hold on a second. All right, you may record your votes electronically. While we're doing this, if our tech folks could just see what's going on with that configuration situation. I mean, I don't mind waiting a few seconds, but it's never done that before. All right. Mr. City Manager,
Okay.
it did pass.
And we've got the FY 2017 Georgia DOT Transportation Planning Contract. This is an annual contract, and the amount is $257,167, and that's federal highways 80%. Our local match is $64,292 for a total of $321,459. We're asking your approval.
Okay, we have a motion and second for approval. There appears to be no discussion. I'll cue it to vote. Let's see, wait, hold on a second. Let him take a look at this. See, what's that voting configuration? Okay. Okay, well, let's just see if it starts by itself. Otherwise, I'll just do it orally. Because it takes you a few minutes, right? Yeah, see how it's saying, anyway, I don't know. All right, it looks like it's going to give us some problems. You all can go ahead and try and restart if it doesn't affect the mic system. Let's take the vote orally. All those in favor, please state aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Thank you.
Okay, next I've got what we bring to you annually, and this is the fiscal year 17 Public Defender's Contract. It's $1.6 million and $1.4 for Muskogee, and then Chattahoochee, Harris, and the other counties, a smaller portion. Chattahoochee, $5,125, Harris County, $114. The total amount is $1.6 million.
All right, we've got a motion second for approval. All those in favor, please state aye. Any opposed?
I've got the allocation of home funds to NeighborWorks Columbus, Inc., and asking for your approval to enter into a home written agreement between the city and NeighborWorks Columbus, Inc.
We've got a motion and second for approval. Is there any discussion on this matter? Councilor Huff. There we go, Councilor Huff.
David Fox, NeighborWorks Columbus.
Good afternoon. I'm not against the project. I just wanted council to kind of listen to me rant a little bit. Once you finish this in Bellwood, we had a groundbreaking ceremony off of Casita Road on Dawson a year or so ago with the congressman and everybody in town. And this money was taken from that project and moved. And all I was told was the ground was too flat and there was some infrastructure problems. So my question is, once you finish doing this, are you coming back? First question.
To Winterfield?
To Winterfield.
We have quite a few lots in Winterfield. In fact, we're presently trying to vet a cottage replacement for one of the other home allocations that we have. So we have not left Winterfield.
Okay. And then the grounds that we had, well, we had the groundbreaking ceremony. Any updates on what was wrong with the property? Since I thought all the initial examining of the property would have been done before we had a groundbreaking.
Sometimes marketing gets ahead of the engineers, but in the parlance of developers and of our engineer, which was Moon Meeks Patrick, they'd never seen a flatter lot. There was essentially no way to retain or get water out of there. The city's infrastructure in that area, as you're probably well aware, Councilor, is very old, antiquated, and underserved. And a lot of the areas within Winterfield, because it is basically a flat, developable area still, would require a lot of infrastructure to replacement, a lot of storm sewers, a lot of sewage system. So it's a decision that in the future that will have to be addressed for the folks that live there. Now, most of Winterfield now is becoming an investor property area. A lot of homeowners have left or passed on, and so it's something that I think the council and we as a community need to look at. There are several communities like that, but Winterfield has its own special problems.
Okay, because I was looking, I guess that's about a $400,000 project or so.
Well, the original Winterfield project was going to be upwards of $2 million. Originally there was a plan to build 6 duplexes.
Right, the initial
Right.
was about
Now,
400.
in Bellwood, we have lots that don't have near the development problems that Winterfield's got. This has been a 2-year process, as you are well aware.
Aware, yes.
For a lot of different reasons, costs have really gone up, and DCA's, anyway, it's had some problems in administrating this particular project. Hopefully we do have a permit to start building, but the cost of construction have gone way up.
Okay, and I saw something about the additional monies. I may be getting 2 things mixed up, that they had an additional, I guess, 100,000 or so added to do something.
The original grant from DCA, as I understand it, was about $400,000. The city was able to retain part of that as an administration fee, so the net monies to NeighborWorks in the building of this will be about $380,000. There are 2 duplex units or 4 units for rental to be built. As you recall, they're primarily for seniors and veterans of low income. And in the 2 years of process of bringing this to fruition, the costs have gone up substantially. The 140 that we've asked for home allocations, I think, are coming from expiring funds, and it was an opportunity to use those funds on behalf of the city and on behalf of this project.
Okay, I just want you to know that I support Councilor Garrett in Bellwood. Been to a few meetings over there, great meetings. But I just want council to know, I just want people to know, the public to know. We just want everyone to be fair with us in District 3. And if we have infrastructure problems, which we already knew we had before this came about, so I'm just amazed that it was missed. That's something I ran on, infrastructure. It exists.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll probably call you. I'll come by to talk with you because I just want to know, and I want the district to know. That day, several people that attended went across the street to a neighbor's house and met them, and they congratulated us and thanked us for coming into the neighborhood to make changes, make things better, and then we left. No announcement, so that's where I am with that this morning, and this afternoon now, and just wanted an update, and just want to make sure there is some consideration for coming back to make Winterfield a better place to live. Thank you.
All right. System's back up and running. That concludes our discussion, and it is not. So all those in favor, please state aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? All right, it passes.
Next, I've got allocation of Chodo set-aside funds to NeighborWorks Columbus. Asking your approval to enter into a home Chodo written agreement.
Okay, we've got a motion and second. Is there any discussion related to this item? Seeing that there's none, all those in favor, please state aye.
Next, we've got a request for use of OLOS public safety contingency dollars, asking you to authorize the use of these contingency dollars in the FY17 budget for fire EMS.
Got a motion and second for approval. We have Councilor Thomas with the discussion, and you're going to have to turn on her mic. I don't have control of the board at this time.
Mr. City Manager, I just have a question. This is a $261,000 appropriation out of the contingency fund, and there's that leaves about $90,000 in the contingency fund out of this year's budget, right?
17, yeah.
Is that contingency fund? I mean, do we have money going into the contingency fund? Will it be replaced or over the year, or as we get money in for the OLOS?
I believe it will over the years, but this year it was 352, and we're asking to use 261. Yeah, so it's an annual allocation as a contingency fund in about the same amount.
So if we approve this 261,000, that'll leave about 90,000 in the contingency, and that will not be replenished, right?
Not this fiscal year.
Not
right.
this fiscal year.
You'll get new money in the next fiscal year for contingency. An additional allocation will come each fiscal year.
Because I'm just concerned that I know that we have used this contingency fund for various things, and for it to be
early in the fiscal year
and only have $90,000 left in there is a little unsettling, but I know we have to do what we need to do at Station 11 also.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
We have Councilor...
Pam looks like she wants to say something, Mayor.
Okay.
I just want to add, too, that contingency is different than the fund balance of that fund. So contingency is allocated as part of a budgeted appropriation each fiscal year, but that's different than fund balance. So there also is fund balance in the OLOST fund, as well as an allocation for contingency.
And if we had to, could we move money from the fund balance to the contingency?
Yes.
If we needed to supplement that 90,000?
That's correct.
Or they could just approve spending
Approve
it
it
from
the
fund balance.
fund balance?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. We have a motion and a second. There being no further discussion, all those in favor, please state, what? Councilor Baker.
Well, that's
I'm sorry, I'm
all right.
playing with
No.
a handicap over here, so
that's
I
okay.
appreciate
No,
it.
I'm not going to hold us up. I just,
No.
because I think Councilor Thomas, I just want to make sure she was comfortable with the issue. That fire station is desperate and is behind schedule. It needs to get done, and, if this is what it takes to get it done, let's get it done. I'm getting calls from constituents in that area who are concerned about the lack of the station. They've had to move those resources to other places and bring them back in when needed, and they have had some fires in that area. So it's a real concern. So I appreciate getting this done as fast as we can.
And I agree with that, Councilor Baker. I just wanted to make sure that we understood that this would bring that contingency fund down.
That's right.
And we need to be aware of that.
And I think it's a good point, because if you replenished it from the fund balance, well, then now you're bringing the fund balance down. So
Yeah.
you got to watch that too. Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Discussion being concluded, all those in favor, please state aye. Are there any opposed?
Then I've got purchases. The first is property damage recovery services. It's an RFP. We're asking council to approve Peachtree Recovery Services.
Got a motion to approve. Is there a second? A second, and then Councilor Huff, did you have discussion? Oh, okay. And this is item A, the property damage recovery services?
That's correct.
Okay. All right, all those in favor, please state aye. Any opposed?
I've got annual maintenance for a muck shot system. It's $34,000.
I've got a motion and a second to approve item B, which is annual maintenance for our mugshot program system. There being no discussion, all those in favor, please state aye. Any opposed?
Then I've got a requesting approval for payment to Tyler Technologies, $34,773. It's an annual software support and license renewal.
We've got a motion and second for approval of the annual software support and license renewal fee for the Land Records Imaging Indexing System. There being no discussion, all those in favor, please state aye. Are there any opposed? Okay, is that just item D, Councilor Davis? D and E. Okay, so that's a motion and a second by the Mayor Pro Tem to approve the annual software license renewal for permitting system and business license system, and also the annual VMware software license renewal. There being no discussion, all those in favor, please state aye. Any opposed?
And the last on the purchase agenda is asking you to authorize the execution of change order 4 on the Forest Road Bridges project with Southeastern Site Development. It's $164,000 to expedite improvements for the bridge over Lindsay Creek. And
Got a motion. Is there a second? Any discussion related to item F? Seeing none, all those in favor, please state aye. Are there any opposed?
And we've got 2 presentations or updates. Finance Director Angelica
When do we
Alexander is going to do the one on the debt policy. We can, but we need to do the debt policy today, though. How fast can you talk? Why don't you go ahead?
Okay. Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. What I'm presenting to you today is a new fiscal policy. It's a debt management policy. A lot of the information that's contained in the policy references processes and procedures that we already adhere to. So adoption of this policy would just be making it official, so to speak. So why are we adopting this policy? GFOA best practices suggest the adoption of a debt management policy. And as you may know, adoption of any GFOA best practice helps us to improve or maintain our bond rating to bond rating agencies. And so in drafting this policy, we've consulted with our bond counsel, financial advisors, and the city attorney's office. So some of the highlights in the policy that you'll see is with adoption of this policy, we'll address the following, which is our debt limit, our debt structure, debt issuance, debt management, and use of derivatives. So in regards to our debt limit, in our policy, the debt margin shall not exceed 1.75% of the fair market value of all taxable property within the county. Any proposed debt will be coordinated with the comprehensive plan and the capital improvement program. The city may issue general obligation bonds, revenue bonds, tax allocation bonds, capital lease purchase agreements, and other obligations as permitted by state law. And we'll use conservative revenue projections when determining revenue sources for debt repayment. Just sort of continuing our debt limit, when analyzing debt affordability, we'll use several debt ratios. For example, debt service as a percentage of revenues, debt service as a percentage of budget, and debt as a percentage of the assessed value. Those are just some of the examples of the ratios that we'll use. The city may sponsor conduit debt financing for third-party organizations such as the Development Authority. But just as noted in the policy, sponsorship does not obligate the city financially, and the city reserves the right to approve or disapprove conduit debt based on credit or other circumstances that it may deem significant. As it relates to our debt structure, capital improvements and other projects financed through bonds or capital leases shall be repaid within a time period not to exceed the expected useful life of the project or the asset, but in no means shall it exceed 30 years. The city will amortize debt with an overall level principal and interest payment structure over the life of the debt. Long-term debt will not be used to pay for ongoing costs, and debt will not be used if pay-as-you-go funding is available. Just getting a little bit more into our debt structure, any capital financing proposal of a department, elected office, board, or authority that involves lending or pledging of the city's credit through the sale of bonds, loans, or leases shall be reviewed by the Finance Department and the City Attorney's Office before the pledge is considered by council, except where exemption from this restriction is allowed under state law. As far as the call provisions, those will be made as short as possible at the lowest cost to the city, and bonds will only be callable at par value. The city will typically use interest rates unless there's clear documentation that shows the use of variable interest rates as the best alternative and most beneficial to the city. As it relates to our debt issuance, bonds will be sold through a competitive bid process unless conditions favor a negotiated bid. If a negotiated bid is used, an underwriter will be selected for the purchase and sale of the negotiated debt. The city will use bond counsel and financial advisors to help facilitate the structuring, pricing, and issuance of any debt. Periodic reviews of all outstanding debt will be made to determine if there are any refunding opportunities, and if there's a present value savings, refundings will be considered if they're within certain targeted amounts, and on a case-by-case basis if it's not within that targeted amount. Those amounts are listed in the draft policy that you have before you. Just continuing with our debt issuance, the city will continue to maintain good communication with bond rating agencies by providing periodic updates on the city's general financial condition, by coordinating meetings and presentations for new issuances. The city will strive to maintain or improve its bond rating by consistently really improving financial policies, budgets, forecasts, and just the overall financial health of the city. The Finance Department and with the help of financial advisors will prepare the necessary materials and presentation to the rating agencies as needed. And according to the policy, the city is setting a minimum rating requirement for its direct long-term debt as AA- or AA3 or higher. Currently, where we stand right now as far as our ratings, with Moody's, we have a AA2 rating currently that's denoted, if you look at the screen there, in red, and currently our S&P rating is AA+. What we're saying as far as where we're setting the minimum is what's circled, and for Moody's, that's AA3, and S&P, it's AA-, or AA-.
You saying that's going to be our minimum?
The minimum is what's circled.
Okay, and financially, are we good where we are right now?
Oh, absolutely. We're in the red.
Okay, okay.
So we're above the minimum right now, but what we're saying is that's our threshold, is what's circled.
And what do we need to do other than increase funds to move up on the Moody side? Because it seems like we're at the top of Standard & Poor's.
We are at the top in as far as the quality of bonds in that particular, for S&P. Just always fund balance reserves plays a big factor in us improving our rating.
Okay.
And also establishing policies such as this.
Yeah.
They also look at that, when making determinations as far as our rating, so.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and if you recall, we came to you earlier in the year, at least our financial advisors were here, and one of the things that was talked about in our bond rating was the fact that we did not have a debt policy. And so that's why we're coming forward to you at this time to make sure that we get a debt policy, because we don't want to go to the minimum, we want to go the other direction.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we have Counselor Henderson.
Well, and just to add to that, the things we can control, we'll control, issuing a debt policy and trying to make sure we maintain our reserve. But there are other things we can't control, the drawdown at Fort Benning, the overall economic environment in our community. And with us being forecasted in Georgia as the only job loss city, I mean, that impacts us too. So,
Absolutely.
so I applaud you for doing this. Whatever we can do to kind of mitigate some of the stuff beyond our control is going to help us maintain those ratings.
And that's an excellent point, Councilor Henderson, because they do and will be looking at the drawdown at Fort Benning, and that has an impact on our bond rating.
Okay. All right, that's all.
Okay. So as it goes into our debt management, what we're saying here is that investment of bond proceeds, they're going to be done according to state law and in accordance to our own investment policy, which we have in place. The city is committed to providing full and complete primary and secondary disclosures, and will provide full cooperations with all parties involved, whether it's the rating agencies, Joe Blow Citizen, other levels of government, in an effort to share clear, comprehensible, and accurate financial information. What we're saying in the policy is that the city will use bond proceeds within the established time frame to avoid arbitrage. And the finance department is responsible for providing annual disclosure information to state and national information repositories as required, which we do now already. So like I said, a lot of these processes and procedures we currently have in place, we're just officially adopting with this debt management policy. As it relates to the use of derivatives, the city will not use derivatives or any other alternative financing for speculative purposes, and will exercise extreme caution in the issuance and sale of derivative instruments. Derivatives will only be used with council's approval and for appropriate objectives. Any consideration of using derivatives will include an analysis of all known risks and associated costs. So, and just due to the complexity of these instruments, their utilization will be considered only when there is sufficient understanding and expertise of the products, and an appropriate use of the products has been developed. So again, that's just a brief overview of our debt management policy. You have the draft copy of the policy before you. We're not asking you to adopt the policy today, but we will come back on the 26th and ask for adoption of this policy. So you have until then to review the draft. And if you have any questions now, or I'll take them. If not,
We've got Counselor Davis.
Well, what is our current debt margin as to fair market value?
Currently,
Taxable
as of FY15, which is the last information that we posted to Emma, it was 0.93%.
0.93?
Yes, sir.
And just looking at this 0.93 should be good, but that shouldn't affect us in any way if we ever have any catastrophic emergency or anything like that we would need additional funding.
No, it has to be not greater than a certain percent of your taxable property, and our, 1.75, and our taxable property is about 4.6 billion, I believe.
Hang on.
Well, not property, that's the digest, I'm sorry.
Right.
That's the digest.
Right, but that percentage is based on the estimated actual value, and that is over $13 billion, so.
Yeah. So,
All right, we have Counselor Baker.
And this I was just curious about. I know you mentioned in our policy about the potential for tax allocation bonds to be issued. Are those rates just determined in the marketplace, or is our bond rating used as a basis, even though we're not supposed to be liable for those? Or is our bond rating used as a basis for issuing those?
For the tax allocation bonds?
Is there a separate pricing for those, or is our bond rating used for the initial issuance of those?
I don't believe, Pam, you don't know.
Yeah, I'm not.
You don't know.
Not that it doesn't.
Let us check that, because I don't think.
I'll take that as a referral and
Yeah.
get you an answer.
I was thinking those went into the marketplace, and the market established those rates, rather than it being based on our bond rating, but I was just curious.
Yeah.
I'll take that as a referral and get you an answer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get back
Thank
with you.
Okay, we have Counselor Henderson.
Well, as a follow-up to that, I was curious about the fact that if our maximum borrowing limit is a percentage of our, the total value of our property, is that diminished by the amount that's within those tax allocation districts? Because that amount of property is used to determine how much you can issue the tax allocation bonds for. Isn't that right?
Well, I think there's a difference.
Well, as far as the tax allocation, the type
right,
of bonds
is that
that's issued within a tax allocation district, I believe those are specific, there are certain type of revenue bonds.
Right.
And revenue
It's-
bonds are not counted against our debt,
Okay.
our legal debt margin.
And that's part of what I was asking, but also as we figure what our total allowable credit is, 1.75%, do we take the value of the property of those within the tax allocation districts out of that calculation, since it's already being utilized in a calculation for specific tax allocation bond?
I don't know the answer to that.
Pam, if you know.
All right, it's not going to come into play. I just was curious.
Well, the market value wouldn't know. Yeah. Your Pam's.
You have to remember, too, that only the increment for the tax allocation district is what goes.
Above the current amount.
Above the current line.
Okay.
Oh, that's correct. That's what's used to repay the debt.
Right.
Right, no, I got that, but I just
Right.
didn't know, since you were using that as a basis for determining what your debt, your line of credit is, basically.
Right.
Okay.
That's a good question.
All right, I think that concludes the discussion.
Okay.
So you'll bring that back at our next meeting for voting?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, we will go into the clerk's agenda. Madam Clerk.
Madam Mayor and Council, on the clerk's agenda, items 1 through 6 are biographical sketches for individuals who have expressed an interest in serving on our boards or those who have been nominated. Mr. John Dalio for Keep Columbus Beautiful Commission, Katie Franklin for Keep Columbus Beautiful Commission, Kobe Garrick for the Columbus Aquatic Center, Ms. Christine Consoletti, Bruce Samuels, and Brandon Wallace. 7 through 9 are resolutions excusing counselors.
We've got a motion and second for approval. Is that of items 7, 8, and 9?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor, please state aye.
Item 10 is a letter resignation, it's a request asking that the seat of Dale Williams be declared vacant.
Okay, we've got a motion and second that it be received with regrets. All
No.
those in favor, please
No,
state.
Mayor.
Oh.
Mayor, it's not a resignation. We're asking the seat to be declared vacant.
Oh,
So
I'm
we
sorry, I was
need
looking
a-
at number 11.
Number 10.
Okay, number 10. We have a motion and second to declare the seat of Dale Williams vacant. All those in favor, please state aye.
And then item 11 is a letter resignation from Ms.
And there's a second. All those in favor, please state aye.
And we also have another letter of resignation from Glenda Culpepper resigning from Tree Board.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second that the letter be received with regrets. All those in favor, please state aye.
Minutes are very...
Hold on, we've got Counselor Davis. Counselor Davis.
I have a question about the Public Safety Advisory Board Committee minutes that were just received. There's 13, 14, I believe. Are we going into that now? Well, okay, well, go ahead then. No, that's my question. That is, help me understand that.
Yeah, unfortunately, they've just submitted them. The first of every year, we normally send out a letter to the secretary and the chairperson asking them to make certain that their boards send their minutes to us, and unfortunately, they don't always do that. And I believe about a couple of weeks ago, the city manager did send out something, or was asked to send out something asking that these boards do submit their minutes, and these are the ones that are now coming in.
Okay, we've got a motion and second. All those in favor, please state aye.
And Councilor Davis, we will, instead of doing it during the first of the year, we'll actually do it twice a year. We'll do it in January and then again in June, prior to the beginning of our next fiscal year. On our board appointments, on our Board and Family Children Services, Ms. Tony Huff has resigned. We'll need a replacement for that seat. On our Civic Center Advisory Board, Councilor Barnes is nominating Mr. Bruce Samuels. He can be confirmed.
Got a motion and second that Mr. Samuels be confirmed. All those in favor, please state aye.
And Councilor Woodson is working on a replacement for District 7, as well as Councilor Thomas for
All right, Counselor, hold on, Counselor Thomas.
For the Civic Center Board, John Boyd, B-O-Y-D.
No.
Got a motion and second that Mr. Boyd be confirmed. All those in favor, please state aye.
And on the Columbus Aquatics Commission, we've outlined the seats. Councilor Garrett is nominating Mr. Brandon Wallace. Councilor Davis is nominating Mr. Bryant Abeda, as well as Mr. Bobby Ledford. And those are all that's been nominated now, and we'll bring... yes, we can.
Okay, is that a motion, Counselor Huff? Yes. Okay, that's a motion and then a second by the Mayor Pro Tem. All those in favor, please state aye.
On our golf...
Okay, we have Counselor Thomas, hold on.
I thought I remembered Mr. Swinehart had been nominated for one of
He
these
declined.
He had been nominated, but unfortunately, he has declined that appointment.
Okay, thank you.
And on our Columbus Golf Course Authority, I'm going to ask this be delayed for another week since we don't have a full quorum, and Councilor Barnes has nominated one of the individuals. On our Circle Commission, we are still trying to get a replacement for this seat of Mr. Pedro Augusto. On our Community Development Advisory Council, Councilor Davis, Mr. Hayes is not eligible to succeed himself. We'll need a new nominee from you. District 9, Mr. Martin does not want to serve again.
We have Counselor Huff, hold on. Excuse me, Counselor Thomas.
For this one is Michael Porter, P-O-R-T-E-R.
Okay, because it is a district appointment, Mr. Porter can be confirmed.
Got a motion and second for confirmation. All those in favor, please state aye.
On a hospital authority, Mr. Ken Chong has resigned. We'll need a replacement for this seat. On a Keep Columbus Beautiful Commission, we've outlined the recommendations from council as well as the commission, and we can have these individuals confirmed. I'm sorry?
Right. Yeah, speaking of sketchy judgment.
Did we get a second?
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
We have a motion by Counselor Huff. Can I get a second?
All right, all those in favor, please state aye.
Thank you. And on our Recreation Advisory Board, Counselor Woodson is nominating Ms. Kim Jinks for this District 7. She can be.
We got a motion and second for confirmation. All those in favor, please state aye.
On our Valley Partnership Commission Authority, Mr. Tyler Townsend has resigned. Council will need to nominate someone for this seat. On our Youth Advisory Council, we have outlined the nominees for the mayor's appointment, as well as districts 1, 2, 3, 4, and 8, and those individuals can be confirmed, as well as 9.
And 9.
Yes. Can I have a motion for confirmation?
Got a motion, is there a second? All those in favor, please state aye.
And that's all I have, Madam Mayor.
All right, we've got a motion to adjourn, is there a second? All those in favor, please state aye. All right, we are adjourned, thank you all.